Hey, thanks for tuning in. Theo Naciker from South Africa, one of the most intense and critical thinkers of contemporary astrologers, have joined me. Thanks, Theo, for joining, and it's a pleasure having you on.
Thanks, Ashwin. Good to be here. Finally, we've been talking about talking and having a chat for a while, but we've just
Sure.
been, it's been a busy middle of the year for I think everybody. So glad to be here.
Thank you so much. So, we are taking the very sensitive topic, but we are trying to bring about a unification here in terms of how both. Not how both tropical and sidereal zodiacs work, but still, we are just trying to give an assertion that uh, prediction works with both the zodiacs, and astrology is still the same authentic astrology, and it doesn't matter if you're using a sidereal zodiac or a tropical zodiac. So, and you are someone who has been working with both the zodiacs. You're into Vedic astrology, and you're also into traditional and medieval Western astrology, and you're also into modern Western astrology. So,
Mm.
so and you work with specific astrology as how it is. So you use tropical house system while you're doing Western stuff, and you use sidereal systems when you're using the Vedic or Jyotish, which gives a really unique perspective in terms of explaining or stating how both the zodiacs are valid and how both the zodiacs work, especially from a predictive astrology point of view. Because many astrologers have said that it doesn't matter if you are really using a wrong zodiac, okay? But for example, Vic Dikara said that it doesn't matter if you really use a wrong zodiac, because astrology is not entirely dependent on zodiac, and there are various other things that still matter the most. Okay, so
Mm.
but I come from the other side of the argument, saying that both the zodiacs work, because even though I don't work with tropical zodiac from a consultation point of view, I am more it is about the comfort zone, and it's not that being against. I use tropical zodiac, I test the tropical zodiac, and it just works as fine as sidereal zodiac. So but I would really like to hear from you, because you are someone who uses both the zodiacs, and you're not you don't shy away from expressing your views in terms of
Mm.
how to use both the zodiacs, especially your recent work in terms of flipping the zodiacs based on the
Mm.
northern and southern hemisphere. So I thought it'd
Mm.
be interesting to hear your point of view as to how both the zodiacs work in practice.
Okay. Well, I think there's a couple of things to mention, to unpack there. The first is the question of the divination aspect, which you've mentioned, and which I think is valid. So there is an element to the art of astrology which functions through intuition once it has a proper foundation base. And that foundation base can be context in various types of context. So if context for the astrologer means knowing their traditional techniques, so it's second nature for them, and they feel comfortable with those subset of techniques in consultation, and each person is going to define what that is for them. If that is the context that their intuition needs to have upon which to then move, then I think that's fine. Context can also mean which system I'm working in. So for me personally, that is this if someone comes to me with a question, I first ask myself, is this something that is most easily dealt with using Western astrology techniques, or is it something that I need to use the Vedic astrology regimen for? And so that's the first thing that I do. So if somebody comes to me with, it's their fifth marriage and they ask me about their third child and their third pregnancy, and it's quite complicated, or there's a property issue, a property dispute involving court cases, and the parents are involved. There are methods in Vedic astrology that are already laid out to deal with those kind of specific things, because there are Varga charts for all these different aspects of life. So it lends itself to a detailed analysis in that way. For example, someone like Elizabeth Taylor, who was married 8 times, well, 7 times if you consider the sixth one to be a remarriage. In Western astrology, there's just one part of marriage, and how much can you extract from that and the seventh house and its ruler to detail all the professions of the the seven partners, and which ones gave children and which one didn't. It's a little bit limited in that way, in that scope. And there could be techniques that are developed, like looking at perfections and the progress moon is changing, the seventh house focus, etc., that needs to be developed on the Western astrology side. I'm not saying that it can't do it.
Sure.
All I'm saying is that it needs to be developed to become a new tradition going forward. So whereas in Vedic astrology, that's because of the unbroken nature of the tradition in the East, these techniques are really fleshed out and really worked out. And it's not about, Vedic astrology being more fatalistic or not. It's got nothing to do with that question.
Yeah.
It's just which system has the detailed techniques already available for me as a practitioner to use, and which system doesn't. Now, if someone comes to me and they want to know, sometimes except when it comes to detailed questions where I will lean towards Vedic astrology, complicated questions, sometimes the Western astrology deals with also complex issues as well. So, for example, the complexity of psychology and those aspects is very much fleshed out in, the more modern forms of astrology, although it is also there in the tradition. So, techniques about soul and manner, temperament, those are quite in-depth techniques dealing with the nature of the body-mind connection, if we want to put it simply. And similarly, in Vedic astrology, it's dealt with also in very great depth, Atmakaraka, Janmarashi, D16 chart, all those, the details are there as well. So for me, it's not a matter of which one is better. It's a matter of which one is most appropriate for me to use, given the situation I'm dealing with, from the client perspective. So I put the client in the center of the question, and then the astrology, the tools that I have, I just use whatever I need to use. So that's how I practice it. And I find that if when I do that and I keep each system's set rules as they are intended to be, things work out very quickly, and the answers come quite readily. You don't have to, work that hard, so to speak. It's just a matter of applying the techniques that you know. So I think astrologers need to start understanding the different tools that we all use. Because I think where the world of astrology is going is that it's not about, which one is better, or which one came first, or who gave it to who. That is based on intellectual insecurities of some people. But if we are practicing astrologers and we have confidence in our art, we also practice in unity and togetherness, because we are presenting a unified front to the public. And we are part of what that entails is not just that I'm confident in what I know, but I also am cognizant and understanding of the other astrologers that are also my peers and what tools they are using. I need to have some understanding of what their context for their professional practice is in a respectful way. And I think that will go a long way in moving this whole thing forward, because it's sort of stuck in a loop and it keeps coming back every so many years in a loop. Because I think the people who are teaching astrology are so specialized in their niche area that the intellect can assume that the whole world just revolves around that. And people get quite, they identify so strongly with what they know, and ignore that there's a whole world out there of what they don't know. So, and that can be, difficult for some people to integrate into their practice or their living experience. I'm not saying that everyone needs to now practice all forms of astrology. That's not what I'm saying.
Yeah.
But I think if you're being professional about it, there should be a level of, okay, let me do an intro to Vedic astrology course just to get a sense of, okay, that's the perspective, that's the assumptions of that system. So I know where I stand in relation to it. because otherwise, there's a lot of ignorance that gets pandied about as knowledge.
Sure, excellent. I think that laid a very solid foundation of where this discussion is probably headed. So I think we fall in two sides of the same court, where both of us are inclusive in terms of how we do astrology, but the major difference lies in where I mean you choose a specific technique based upon the client's question or the need of the hour. So whatever the question it may be, you just analyze the nature and a possible outcome of that question, and you choose a specific technique or a system of or a form of astrology. But what I do on the other hand is like, uh, I use I pick up a specific timing technique or any technique, and I implement it in my already existing armory of astrology. For example, I think we were just talking about it offline in terms of how I use some of the Hellenistic timing tools with my existing sidereal zodiac. So my foundation has always been Vedic astrology, and I use various solar return techniques of Dorothes or Valence. I use the planetary alignment and various other quality concerning techniques from Hellenistic tradition. And I also use annual profections and zodiacal releasing in the sidereal context, which has been fascinating for me. And it is not that I'm kind of against the tropical zodiac. I've also tested tropical zodiac, and it works just as fine as the sidereal zodiac. And but again, we are speaking this offline again. So the only glitch that I have in using the zodiacal releasing in a sidereal zodiac is the 360-day format of zodiacal releasing with the 365-day format of sidereal zodiac. So which kind of becomes a little bit messy, and there can be a lot of deviations in terms of when a specific period starts and ends in a person's life. And when it comes to level 2 of zodiacal releasing, even a month can actually be super significant in terms of making predictions. So so there,
this is sorry, go ahead.
no, I just meant to say that there is a limitation with regards to a specific technique, but apart from that, it just works fine. And zodiacal releasing is not the only timing technique that you can use. There are other various timing techniques that we can use to kind of narrow in or specify a specific event in a person's life, especially speaking from a predictive astrology point of view. So yeah,
there are a lot of common I wouldn't say common concepts as foundations, because the foundations are quite different, but between Vedic and Western. But for example, there are some common techniques. So there are progressions used in Western astrology. There are also progressions using Vedic astrology. But how they are conceived of is different. So how they are used therefore is also different. What they mean is also therefore different. So I think that people, and also people make this assumption that, oh, we also use progressions, therefore we are the same, or therefore it came from here. And I think that's an assumption, and that's quite a big leap to make in the logic or reasoning without first looking into how it's being used. Because it's not about, I mean, if we both have a car, we can't really say that I got the car from you, or you got the car from me, or we both are using the same car or the same way. If I'm using the car as a, as a kitchen, it's completely different. So how something is being used also tells you about the conceptualization, the fundamental concepts of how that thing has been made to be used. And that, I think, going apart from using techniques to prove which one came from where, people also have to look at the concepts of how those things are being used. Because if that is also not the same, then they're not the same.
sure.
Following a logical process. So just seeing a word repeated in two different texts doesn't necessarily mean that they are linked. And I think some oversimplistic reasoning happens sometimes. So whatever the context is, and yes, zodiacal releasing, yeah, I haven't used zodiacal releasing all that much because perfections is much easier for me to use in my
Sure.
head.
Yeah.
And monthly perfection, daily perfections, that can happen very quickly when you're looking at a chart. So that's what I've practiced. And zodiacal releasing is just another 2 more button clicks I have to make in a consultation. So, but it just shows that again, the context of how a certain technique has been constructed, that is what needs to be understood. Because let's say zodiacal releasing was constructed using a 540 day cycle, then we'd have to use that as the base instead of 360.
Yeah,
But it was
exactly.
something else.
Yes. So that's where I find tropical zodiac being more relevant when we use zodiacal releasing, and it obviously works much better in tropical zodiac. So yeah, that's basically it. So we obviously we need to know the foundations of how a specific technique has been developed, which will give us a right vision in terms of how to use the technique under various conditions in our astrological practice. So yeah, and you were talking about a specific technique, for example, marriages. So if a person has 7 or 8 marriages, we need something more tailor made, such as the Vedic techniques, to kind of decipher what's really going on. So and I mean, do you have some charts to share? Because I think
Yes, I can. Yes, I can share my screen, and then we can get, because I think it's also useful for people to see.
yes, sure.
Let's see. I can use this. Let's do this first example. This is a example of property. Okay. So I'm going to use the Western chart to start with, and then I'll move to the Vedic. Okay. And I've also got Elizabeth Taylor's chart here because that's a really crazy case. Because sometimes, I find when people are, talking about techniques, they just use really simple examples over and over again. And for me, that's not proof of skill or proof of that technique. It's just proof of the baseline. But how robust is that technique to handle when it's under stress? That's stress testing. My background is in engineering, so stress testing technique is what I care about for something to really make sense to me. So this chart, can you see that?
Yeah, sure.
Okay, so there's an issue about what is the rising sign for this person. So because it's on 29 degrees tropical Taurus here. Sphere. Oh, am I back again? Oh, okay. So can you hear me, Ashwin?
You just went off mute for a moment or
okay.
so.
Okay. So I'm back. So this person's born in the southern hemisphere. So what I do is I flip the signs tropically for the southern hemisphere because in my research, it is showing up to this point that it really is a seasonal paradigm. And that's how it's constructed by design. So this is either Scorpio rising or Sagittarius rising, because I just flipped the signs to this opposite for the southern hemisphere. So you have to use your imagination a little bit. So, right. This person's work is a scientist. They work in research. So you have a Virgo midheaven, and Mercury is in the 8th house of research, ruling that. So that is their job, and they're quite stable in that job. So anyway, they were coming to me with a question about when will I be able to buy property or move into my own apartment or house. That was the question. So what I did was that I saw here that at the bottom of the chart, there is the moon in Aquarius. All right. Mm-hmm. And the 4th house is going to be in Pisces. So I can see here that Jupiter is in Scorpio and the moon is in Aquarius, and they are joined together. So I'm expecting it to be this property question is also going to be linked to the Jupiter cycle for this person, because in this chart, Jupiter rules the 4th house. So I left that to one side, and I also then took the moon, because the moon is in the bottom of the chart. I also want to see, and is ruling the stellium, the Cancer stellium that is here. The Saturn in Cancer typifies the person's anxiety about home and moving and their inability to have the resources for that. So the moon and Saturn are in each other's signs. The moon is in Aquarius and Saturn is in Cancer. So at some point, they're going to have an exchange. And that is when everything in that 8th house that seems to be stuck will be released. Sure. So it's part of their Saturn return, which is what they're going through right now. Okay, Saturn has been in Capricorn for a while. It's the resolution of their Saturn return. That's what they're going through in Western astrology.
Sure.
And I can see here that, so the moon and Saturn are joined together. Now, the moon and Saturn have a resonance by progression, because Saturn transits a sign for 2.5 years, and the moon goes through a sign 2.5 years by progression. So this 2.5 number links Saturn and the moon. And in the chart, because Saturn and the moon are linked in this way, I know that I need to look at progressions for this person, for this particular question. So if I do that, okay, so I've got the Bible on the outside. I'm just going to put the progressed moon on the outside. So at the moment, coincidentally, as we're talking now, the progressed moon is squaring the Saturn. Okay, in this month. Now, what's a point of empowerment here for the person? A point of empowerment here, see, from Cancer, which is what the moon rules, okay, the 8th house Cancer, he's asking me a question about when will I have free cash flow to purchase a house. And purchasing a house is an 8th house signification, because it's a mortgage, okay? People don't buy a house with second house free cash usually. And this person's certainly not going to. So it's an 8th house Cancer. It fits the question very appropriately.
Oh, that's
so excellent. What is the yes?
That's really good interpretation. Yeah.
Yeah. So what is the 4th house from Cancer? It is this Libra. So here I'm seeing Mars, and Mars also rules the ascendant here. We're not sure, but for sure I know that Mars rules the Jupiter in Scorpio. Okay, so Mars has responsibility, because the Jupiter cycle, Jupiter rules the 4th house of the chart. The ruler of Jupiter will have the responsibility of giving what Jupiter wants.
Sure.
So Jupiter is ruled by the Mars. So the 4th house matter, which is very close to this person, because the Jupiter is sitting on the ascendant, okay, ruling that 4th house. It's not a trivial question for this person. They link having property to being expansive, to developing and progressing in their life. Jupiter ruling the 4th house is on the ascendant. So it's ruled by the Mars. So the Mars will have the ability to, Mars is holding that very tightly. So when will the progress moon contact this Mars? The progress moon is going to contact the Mars there, middle of 2020, right? Middle of 2020. So in a year's time, July 2020. So I know that it's only after this time that this person is going to have an idea of where the money is coming from, because this Mars is also in the 11th house of income, right? So because this Mars is in the 4th sign from Cancer, it is ruling the Jupiter, who is ruling the 4th house, and therefore responsible for triggering the matters of the Jupiter cycle. And the Mars is in the 11th house, which is showing income from work. I know that by this time, this person is going to likely have a promotion where they might get more income and therefore more free cash to be able to afford the mortgage.
Sure.
Only after this time, right? So that would be, and why I'm saying that that is happening is because the moon is being received here. The moon is going through, by progression, the sign of Aries. And it's contacting the Mars. So that's the basic timeline I can see. Okay. And yes, then you see when the fourth house perfection year will come, and it's around that time also. So we are looking at the same, all the techniques you want to use. I'm just showing one technique or progression that is, I've linked it from first principles and foundational concepts to why I'm using progression and which planets I'm focusing on. And that's the answer, the rough timeline I gave them. But I did say that you will get something happening with your income at work first, and then you will have the freedom for that. So if I move to the Vedic, so remember we said July 2020. If I move over to the Vedic chart for this person, okay, now here, all right, I'm using the Chitrapaksha Ayanamsha because of a lot of complicated reasons. But all right, so here, that's a whole nother thing. So, okay, so we can see here in the fourth house of the birth chart. I don't know, which system do you use for Vedic astrology chart? I'm using the Eastern.
No, I use the South Indian.
Okay, that's the one I am least familiar with.
Okay, no worries. I think this will work as well.
Okay, so it's anti-clockwise. Okay.
Yeah.
Right. So the Lagna is Taurus.
It's similar to the classical Hellenistic and medieval charts, right? Is that the one?
That has diamonds going. Yes, but they have the first house here.
Yes, yeah, that's the only difference. But here it keeps moving on.
And they fix the houses there.
Sure.
Whereas here the houses are not fixed because the zodiac is fixed in Vedic astrology, so the signs are fixed in that place, and the houses change around the chart. So this is Taurus here. This is always Aries, this big square in the middle at the top. And then the signs are anti-clockwise around the chart. So this is Lagna is Taurus, and the moon is Ketu in the fourth house in Leo. That's a quite harsh placement, Leo in the fourth house, especially with the sun in the eighth. So that is showing that the ruler of the fourth house is in the eighth house. So again, we are seeing the joining of, oh, I'm stuck home, I can't move, I need money. Okay. So even in here, you're seeing that directly in the birth chart. If I look at their property chart, which is the D4, the fourth derivative, well, the Lagna is Vargottama. It is Taurus Lagna as well. And the fourth house is also Leo. And the moon is Vargottama too. So there's something very strong here about the moon. The moon in the fourth house of the property chart can definitely bring property into this person in terms of ownership.
Sure.
Also. So that is very strong. This chart is very strong. Venus is both benefics are in the ascendant. Yes, Rahu's there, but there's two very strong benefics there. Venus is very strong, placed in its own sign. So that makes the moon even stronger. So when Jupiter and moon are in a 4-10 relationship, we know that that is can be quite strong. So anyway, especially in the fourth, because Jupiter is exalted in Cancer, which is the natural fourth, etc., etc. So the fourth house here has the moon. Now the moon is the third house ruler in this chart, in the property chart. So now I'm getting a little bit more detail, because now what it looks to be is that there's going to be some kind of contest. Because third house is about parakrama, or battle, of convincing. Sure. Okay. So the third house ruler placed in the fourth house, yes, will bring property, but on its terms. So this is showing somebody that the property is going to come through, and because it's a fixed sign, it's not easy to negotiate that karma. So here you are saying, well, the moon can be the mother. The moon is in the fourth house in the birth chart too. All right. So this person, well, the first property, they almost have to do it through their mother. The mother is going to help them in some way with it. It doesn't have to be bad. It's just Leo, which is harsh, which is, oh, well, they have an ego issue about it. No, it must be my thing. I can't have someone else do it with me. So they have to, if they can overcome that Leo issue and say, well, okay, I'm going to put my pride aside a little bit and accept the help from maybe this person in order to get the property, then that's how it's going to come. Now you can see that, oh, well, when does the moon period start? Well, the moon period starts in 2020. So it's showing the same thing. Here, okay, that was saying July 2020. If we look at the Pratyantar Dashas for 2020, okay, now you can see that the moon is in a sign of the sun in the property chart. So the fourth house ruler is the Surya, sun, and the sun is in a UT with Saturn, conjunction with Saturn.
Sure.
So by rule of conjunctions, the Saturn will give the results of the sun. So in a moon-Saturn period, this is most likely to happen. So in the moon-Saturn period, that will be middle of 2020. So both systems are saying the same thing. Sure. Now, you can get a lot more detail here because this is so that's where I can see, okay, both can come, if you know what you're doing, both can come to a same or similar
conclusions
in terms of predict conclusions. Now, the difference is in Vedic, you have a lot more detail. So this whole chart is for the property. So because the mother is involved, I want to look at the chart of the parents to see how is she involved. All right. You can go to that level of detail. But let's finish with the property chart first.
Sure.
So here, the moon, I mean, yes, we said the mother has to be involved. And the sun ruling that is in Pisces, and it's next to Saturn. So he asked me, where am I going to get a property? And I said, well, Pisces represents oceans, and Saturn can represent industrial areas. So I said to him, so industrial areas that are next to the ocean, and because it's the sun ruling the fourth house, there's got to be light. So there's a sight, you're looking at the ocean. So a place with the ocean view or that has access to the ocean in some way, like industrial area near the ocean side. And that's the areas he was thinking about. It's a sort of a rundown area, quite, it's like a wharf area here in Cape Town. Sure. So around there he's been looking. So the Vedic astrology is showing that specifically. Okay, and you can see that from the chart. If I look at the chart of the parents, the moon is also in the third house here. The moon rules the chart of the parents. It is the moon is in the third house of battle. So that confirms that there's going to be a contest of will here between him and the mother, or whoever the moon person ends up being. Sure. But this Mercury who rules that is angular, is in a sign of Venus, okay? And this Venus is very well placed with Jupiter. So what I would say to this person is that yes, they will have a contest, but they will be able to negotiate successfully because the third house ruler here, one of them is Mercury's angular, and the other one, Rahu, which is I take Rahu as another rulership for Virgo, that is in the Lagna. So they are dominating the moon here, they are in Kendra. They will be able to overcome that. Now, the 8th house ruler here is Saturn or Rahu. One is Rahu in the Lagna, because the 8th house is Kumbha, Aquarius, and Saturn is again here with the sun. So you saw in the property chart, Saturn was with the sun, the 4th house ruler. In the chart of the parents, Saturn is with the sun. Again. Sure. So this is showing that, and because the sun rules the 2nd house in the chart of parents, that this is showing inheritance from father. So that is also going to happen, but that will happen later. So I also gave them that level of detail for timing and things like that, because it's still the moon-Saturn period. Yeah. Okay, that is activating. So like that, that's one simple example of showing how the two can work really well together. and they are complementary. But of course, the Vedic is a lot more detailed because the Vargas really are the strength of Vedic astrology. Yeah, I can show another example of Elizabeth Taylor, but that's up to you on the time.
No, I don't have any limitations on time as it is. So.
Okay, I'll just do a few things with Elizabeth Taylor.
Okay.
So Elizabeth Taylor's chart. Okay, so here's the chart. Based on the time given at Astrologer Bank is 2:30. I've just added 6 minutes. So it just changes the ascendant degree by one degree. I've changed that to obviously in Vedic astrology because it matches her career chart.
Okay.
So the D10, the Dashansha. So here you can see that if we look, obviously she had 8 marriages, 7 because the 6th marriage was a remarriage to the 5th one. So she had 8 marriages in her life. That's a lot. So the question I have is, how can traditional Western astrology detail each of the partners, show the timing of each of the marriages with the children, everything like that? Because that's a package, okay? And that's a question that I think Western astrologers need to ask themselves. How can we develop, or what tools do I know that I can develop or systematize? Because each person is going to have their own way of doing it. That's fine. But traditionally, we need to have a basis. So traditionally, we look at the 7th house, its ruler, and also the part of marriage. The part of marriage here is at 27 degrees of Virgo. If we take the Saturn-Venus part of marriage, okay?
Sure.
Taking the Saturn-Venus part of marriage is conjunct the South Node. So that shows that, is this person's path really about marriage? Now, yes, that South Node is in the 10th sign of the chart. So it was quite public with their partners. And it's also the 9th house. They met their partners via work in different countries. That's true. So it's both the 9th house and the 10th sign that are working together there. Again, I don't have this whole sign is better than quadrant houses.
Oh,
they
sure.
work, right? So it is like that. They are both happening. Yes, it was while at work. She met all these people. But it was also while she was traveling around this movie set, that the country, this country. It was also 9th house for her. So we can look at, okay, part of marriage conjunct the South Node. Normally you would say that's not a testimony of many marriages, right?
Sure.
Because the South Node in Western astrology is like a void.
Mm-hmm.
It's a decreasing point. But she had 8 marriages, so what's happening? It's an unusual case, right? So here we need to ask ourselves what's going on. The ruler of the 7th house is a Mercury that is in fall and detriment in Pisces, and opposed by Neptune on the 9th house. But the Mercury, one could argue, is Cazimi, if you just consider the Cazimi longitude definition. Okay. It is Cazimi with the sun. So maybe you could say, well, that's the saving grace why she had marriages. Because otherwise, how would you normally predict 8 marriages for this person? The 7th house ruler is in detriment and fall, is combust. Okay,
Sure.
Cazimi is there. But, the sun rules the 9th sign in the 8th house.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, but now you can see that there's an exchange between the sun and Jupiter.
Yeah.
So actually the Mercury is sitting with Jupiter, not with the sun.
Sure. Yeah.
So that changes the whole thing. So Jupiter, because zodiacal state is also about its relationship to its dispositor in Western astrology. So here you have the rule of the 7th house in fall and detriment, but it is partile conjunct Jupiter. So you can say the first marriage may be problematic. Yes, the first marriage there was physical abuse and dominance and violence. Okay, that burning aspect of the sun was there. And she realized she made a mistake with that, because she says in her later works that she was emotionally immature for the first marriage. And that is shown by the Mercury in Pisces. They're quite a naive placement.
Sure.
Okay. especially with contact with Neptune. But then Jupiter came, and Jupiter brought the ninth sign, 8th house, right? In the 4th sign of the chart, this person that she married was the heir to the whole Hilton hotel industry, property. A lot of money was there. So that, and also children came from the marriage because it's Jupiter. Okay, so and Jupiter would be conjunct Mars, who rules the 5th sign, etc., etc. Now you could also say, well, the Venus is conjunct the Uranus, right? Because Venus is also significator of marriage. Venus is in detriment, all right? So there is an issue about multiple marriages through spontaneous, almost like spontaneous combustion, you know, have a feeling, new person, new marriage. And Venus here rules the 10th house. So again, you're going to see that marriage, you know, relationship and work is linked. And her most famous marriage was with Richard Burton when she was playing a queen. She was playing a singular queen without a king, the Aries Venus, Cleopatra. That's what she was playing. And that was the most famous also in the early 60s. I think that movie was in 1961 or 1963 it came out. Anyway, so the part of marriage is 27 degrees of Virgo, which is in the terms of Mars. Again, the Mars is the ruler of the Venus. So there's a strong Mars Pisces feeling about this. It's fruitful, it's there, but it's still a little bit undefined because Mars also rules the 12th house moon. Okay, so there's a little bit of unconsciousness happening with the marriages. Okay, but again, how would you say, right, to predict when and where this is the method? This is the point, you know, how to delineate the 8 marriages. This is the question about, for me personally, also as an astrologer, at this point, I'd take all this I can see from the Western astrology chart, and I'll say, right, I know Vedic astrology already has techniques to detail marriages in detail. So let me just go into that system.
Sure.
So that's what I will do.
Okay.
Right?
Yeah, sure.
Yes, when she had the first marriage, Mars was transiting the part of marriage in Virgo. When she had the second marriage, Saturn was on the midheaven, retrograde on the midheaven, exalted, retrograde on the midheaven. So that was a very prominent marriage. Here's my notes about her marriages. Yes, he was an actor. And again, Saturn exalted in the midheaven type of marriage. That's what was happening. He was 20 years older than her. You know, the Saturn signification was very strong. Sure. The third marriage happened when Saturn was transiting her ascendant. So what I'm saying is, with the Western astrology, it seems in hindsight you can learn a lot. But doing it forward, predicting the 8 marriages, is a bit challenging. You have to, what I do, if I was doing this for a person in Western astrology, I combine my techniques of perfections, of progressions, and transits, and I create a time map that shows the most likely times of marriage, you know, part of marriage, things like that. Because there's all those techniques that are there. They're all over the place. You just have to put them together and synthesize what they all are saying. And that takes time. So I do have a spreadsheet to do that, but I'm not going to do that here because it's sort of like
sure.
a bit involved. So that's what I'm saying. In Western astrology, you have to make up your thing to answer that type of question, to assess all those things. In Vedic astrology, it's ready-made out of the toolbox. So if we go to Elizabeth Taylor's chart here, I'm going to put the Navamsha here instead of the Chaturthamsha. And okay, let's put the Dashamsha here just for fun. Okay. So, oh no, let's put the D7 Saptamsha because we want to see the children.
Sure, yeah, that makes sense.
Okay. So if I actually, I think I have this on a PowerPoint, it might be easier. Yes, can you see that? Is it a bit small for you?
Yes. No, I think it's fine.
It's fine.
Yes.
Okay. So the Navamsha, 7th house, is Cancer.
Mhm.
All right. And the moon is in the 4th house of the Navamsha. It is in Digbala.
Mhm.
And it's in the sign of Mars, which has to do with Mars is the Karaka for property.
Sure.
So the first partner, Moon Digbala, 4th house, in a sign of the Karaka for property. First partner, huge money from hotels and property.
Mm.
Okay, right. Then we can say, well, this, the first marriage, did she have children from the first marriage? No, she didn't. Or did she? Let's see. No, she didn't. So in the Saptamsha chart, the 7th house will show the first partner that will give you a child. Yes, it is same sign, Aries and Aries. Okay, so that's 1 plus, maybe
Sure.
the first partner can give the child. But Mars is in its own sign. Mars in its own sign doesn't give external results. Because the rule in Jyotish is a planet is in its own sign, its external results come from its exaltation ruler.
Mhm.
So Saturn here in the 11th is not going to show that so much, especially in the sign of Sun. That's a Pitra dosha. No, it's not Pitra dosha, but it is a harsh combination. So that's not really supportive. Why? Because the ruler of the 7th house is Mars, but its results are coming from Saturn, which is in Badaka Rashi.
Sure.
Right. So she said the first marriage was like she made a mistake. That's what she said.
Mm.
It's on her Wikipedia page. And she experienced violence in that marriage. Ketu, Mars in Aries in the 7th house.
Oh, sure.
So there wasn't that. Okay. But Ketu Rahu, the nodal axis here, is showing that, okay, the first partner that will give marriage is going to be the one where there's an age difference. There must be an age difference between you and them. So the next marriage, she got married. Okay, so she got married in, the first marriage was in Rahu Venus. So why? Why was the first marriage in Rahu Venus? I'm doing Adana Vimshotri here because the moon is in the 12th house. That's the rule. You can't use the normal Vimshotri for this chart. So here in the birth chart, the 7th house is ruled by Venus. I'm using the English names here
Sure.
because for people to follow me.
Oh,
So
sure.
Venus rules the 7th house. Venus is conjoined Rahu. Venus is exalted.
Mhm.
Okay. So there's a kind of a Yuti situation here with Venus and Rahu. If we look at the Navamsha, Venus and Rahu have also a strong connection because Surya is in a sign of Rahu in Aquarius, and Rahu is in a sign of Surya, which is Leo.
Sure.
So linking these two rashis, so Venus and Rahu, also have a very strong connection here in the Navamsha. And in the Saptamsha, Venus and Rahu also are in Parivartana. Rahu is in Libra and Venus is in Aquarius. So in all of these three, you're seeing Venus and Rahu coming together. So I would expect marriage to happen in Rahu Venus. That's when she had her first marriage. Why? Because where's what am I saying? Moon is, yeah, that's the point I want to make. Yes, the Rahu Venus. So why is it happening through the agency of Rahu Venus? Because they are very much connected in all these charts, relevant for the topic of marriage and in a dominant. And it's all driven by the Rashi chart because that's the root. Okay, that's the root. So but we said the first marriage, the person wasn't old enough. So that's not going to satisfy the nodal condition of giving children. So the second marriage, which happened 2 years in 1950, so also in the Rahu Venus period, all right, it's within the Pratyantara area, you see the difference.
Mhm.
So that is when she had the second marriage, and he was an actor 20 years older than her. So the second marriage will be shown by the second house here. Ooh, I'm blocking out something, blocking out Venus. Okay. Let me not combust my own Venus. So there, the second house here will show the second marriage in the Navamsha. Now, there's an exchange. So what would happen is that, yes, Venus is here, Mercury is here, Surya is there. Sun and Mercury are very strong here because they are Vargotama. Okay, and this person is an actor. They were public with their acting, and they married her because they thought that it would enhance their acting career. Okay, actually, if you look at it, by rule of conjunction, the Venus and the Ketu are exchanging with each other, and the Mercury and the Surya are connected to each other. So, because you put them in order of increasing malefics. So, do you understand? Venus, Mercury, Surya, Ketu. So, like that, the second marriage will be the Rahu situation. Rahu rules that. Rahu's in the 8th house of the chart, and Rahu has an exchange with Surya. So Rahu will come here to Aquarius. It will go to a Tattva level, and it will join with Ketu. Rahu will join with Ketu. When they come together in a chart, that's like, everything dissolving. So what's happening here, this second partner also went away, and because the 9th house ruler, and because 9th house is showing the third marriage, the 9th house ruler is also Mercury sitting in the same sign. The 9th house ruler is also Rahu involved with the second marriage. So she knew she was involved with the third partner while she was with the second one. It was like a scandal situation sort of thing. So that is showing the progression of that. So the Mercury here is showing this third marriage. Now Mercury is exchanging here with the Sun. So very strong, all right? This is in a sign, the second marriage gave the children. So let's look at the Saptamsha chart. Rahu is in the Lagna in a sign of Venus. Venus is in a sign of Rahu, so there's an exchange. Rahu-Venus Dasha will trigger all of this. Then you have the 9th house, which is ruled by Mercury. Mercury, that's showing the first child. Mercury is conjunct Surya, so it happened in a Rahu-Surya period. The next child from that will be shown by the third house in reverse from Gemini. That will be the 7th house. That is Aries. So 1, 2, 3, that will be the second pregnancy. That is Aries ruled by Mars. So the second pregnancy, the second child came in Rahu, Mars, Dasha. Like that. So the point, I'm not going to go further, but the point is that, see, it's all in one place with the Vedic astrology, one page. I don't have to look at multiple biwheels and try and assess and try and synthesize actively and figure it out. The rules are already laid out explicitly in Vedic astrology for this type of thing. And you just have to follow the rules. So that's what I love about Vedic astrology. Yes, there's a lot of rules, but that's what makes it much easier for you when it comes to these kind of complicated things. So that's what I wanted to show. And I think, Elizabeth Taylor is a very good example of, trying to, where I think in the Western astrology, we can do a lot more to make the techniques more robust to the level that they are maybe in Vedic astrology. And I think that's a worthy pursuit. But I also showed the property example to show that Western astrology is still capable of doing things
Sure.
in its own way. And we came to the same result. Again, the Vedic astrology gives a lot more details and you can link things up, which is nice sometimes, especially if you have clients that want details. So if you have clients from India, they want details from the get-go. You cannot start to talk to them about psychology first.
that is the basic background from how Indians come. Astrology has always been extremely predictive and not
Mm.
entirely psychological, even though the Vedic scriptures
Mm.
or ancient people did not really suggest that way. It has been, the culture has been predictive, and people really want bang on stuff. Just let me know when this.
Yes.
Yeah.
So, I mean, in the Vedic astrology, if you want to look at everything from the perspective of a spiritual perspective or a deeper perspective, you can. All you got to look at is look at each Varga from the perspective of Atmakarika. Yeah, and that will tell you things about the deeper significance of that external issue. So the detail is there, the capability for psychology, but much deeper than that is also there in Vedic
Sure.
astrology. Again, so Western astrology is not tropical. Western astrology is capable. I just find that if someone said, when will I be able to buy a property? And I said, after middle of 2020, that's fine. You're answering the question. So Western astrology would suffice really well for that. But if they asked, oh, will I have to be in a court case with my mother or not? Will I get inheritance around that time or later or before? Will I get a promotion because I need money? That's quite an involved question for a Western astrologer to handle, in my opinion. So Vedic astrology is tailor-made for those kind of things.
Sure.
That's why I practice both of them in their own, because you get the sort of, they talk to each other because you are the one talking. It's like you are consulting two more astrologers. I'm consulting a Western tropical astrologer when I look at Western astrology, and I'm talking to a Vedic astrologer when I'm, so it's like I am also having mine to consult my two advisors with me, and I'm asking them what each of them can contribute. And that's how I look at it. It's a conversation between the systems. It's not a competition.
Oh, sure. It certainly is not a competition, and that's probably why we are doing this video today, in terms of at least showcasing that there is no real competition in terms of which is superior or inferior. Both are actually at the same level, and each form of astrology has to offer various different things. And I mean, so in terms of what you said about developing a specific system, I think we can actually integrate the systems or techniques, especially not. I mean, if you integrate the techniques, I think system is already getting integrated. So that would actually be one good, good step ahead in terms of finding out a specific technique in terms of which is necessarily based upon a question, as you just said. So I think that's what I'm going to present in IVC in Kolkata. I think you're also joining there. So integrating the Eastern and Western techniques, which is actually really profound and also extremely fascinating and revealing in terms of doing predictive astrology. So yeah, but I think
when you say integrating tech, what I understand is that I'm not asking people now to use tropical zodiac in Vedic astrology. That's not what I mean by integrating techniques. What I mean is that Western astrologers, with their traditional repertoire of tools that they have, which is a lot, need to come together and find a system that works for these type of complicated questions, where you can, so instead of teaching people just perfections or just zodiacal releasing and just like saying, oh, tada, a lot of the year is here, finished. No, take really complicated cases and apply the techniques to see what you can come up with and come together. And I think that's what people should be having a conference about in Western astrology going forward, is to have a systematic, build a systematic data set of techniques for this type of question, for that type of issue. So people start learning the tool sets for the specific problems that people come to us with, because that's really what matters.
Sure.
So that's where I would like to see the community moving, at least in the West.
Okay. Yeah. I think that's fair. I think that kind of brings in the inclusiveness. I mean, inclusiveness is a byproduct of that attitude of developing, new things in order to help humanity.
Yes.
Anyway, yes.
Yes, because then the Western traditional astrologers and the Vedic traditional astrologers can have a conversation at the same level
Sure.
of rigor and robustness of techniques, and then the exchange can be much more rich, more richer of an exchange of ideas and things, which I believe it used to be back thousands of years ago.
Yeah,
But
maybe.
yes,
Yeah, sure.
maybe.
Of course. Okay. I think that kind
All
of
right.
that brings us towards the end of this discussion, and
Hmm.
yeah, I think we did what we set out to do, but I mean, and we also did practical stuff. So I just hope this is good. And earlier, David Cochran actually did a video in terms of how both tropical and sidereal zodiac makes good sense at individual levels. So I think
Hmm.
I just hope this video is probably reasonably complementary to that video, because there are not a lot of um, including both sidereal and tropical videos on the internet that's doing rounds. It's always versus, but today it's not versus, it's just and for a change.
And
Yeah.
yes, and yeah, like I said, it's a conversation between the systems that they are speaking to me, and that's the divination part of it for me.
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean,
All right.
once we remove divination, astrology is probably, it is not what it is. So thank
Mm.
you so much,
Yeah.
Theo, for your wonderful insights.
Sure. Thank you very much for having me.
Thanks so much. So I also wanted to ask you about, like, your website is Pika Astrology, right?
Yes. www.speakastrology.com, or
Uh,
people can email me info@speakastrology.com.
okay, sure. And your current work is based upon the research of flipping the zodiac for
Oh,
northern and some. Okay, is that the
yes, for
major
Southern
work that you're
Hemisphere.
doing now?
That's the research work that is ongoing as a working hypothesis. So there's a Facebook group for that, the shifting
Yeah.
nature of the tropical zodiac. There's YouTube videos with mundane examples, natal examples, election event examples for people to consider. Yeah, so that's exciting for me.
Sure. The
Uh,
part of the reason why I wanted to take some time before fixing the schedule with you is I just wanted to watch your videos, because um,
hmm.
I'll get more insight into what you're doing. I've already read some of the stuff that you're doing, and you're pretty active on various public forums. And yeah, so but
Hmm.
still, I think YouTube videos and your latest research work has given me more insight into what you're doing. So it gives more uh, you know liberty to kind of uh, to talk with you. And
Yes.
so, yeah, that
Yeah.
certainly does. So
It's sure. It will take time. It's a lot. So it's a lot for me too. We are always learning. So that's the attitude.
sure. So thank you so much, and
Thanks again.